Prosecutors could announce their decision about whether or not to charge the former Minnesota officer who shot and killed Daunte Wright as early as today. The 20-year-old black man's death has sparked widespread anger and protests, especially in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, where protesters clashed with police for a third night in a row. Dozens of people have been arrested so far. Omar Villafranca is following the latest.
And I never imagined this is what was going to happen. I just thought maybe he was being arrested.
Kate Wright, Daunte's mother, said she was on the phone with the woman who was in the car with her son moments after the shooting.
And it was on a FaceTime. And she said, she was crying and screaming, and she said that they shot him. And then she pointed the phone towards the driver's seat, and my son was laying there, unresponsive.
My Lord.
That was the last time that I seen my son.
Police say Daunte Wright had been pulled over for an expired vehicle tag. They say officers tried to arrest him when they learned of an outstanding warrant and that he resisted. Police say Officer Kim Potter, who had been training a new officer, thought she reached for her taser. But she fired a gun instead. Officer Potter was a 26-year veteran of the police force. Along with Police Chief Tim Gannon, Potter offered her resignation Tuesday, saying in a letter she believes it is in the best interest of the community, the department, and my fellow officers if I resign immediately. Brooklyn Center Mayor Mike Elliott.
I'm hoping that this will help bring some calm to the community. Although, I think ultimately people want justice.
Why was she allowed to resign, and why didn't you fire her instead?
We were going through our own processes to make sure that we had all of the documentation in order to be able to do that.
Daunte Wright, life matters.
In a show of solidarity, Wright's family met Tuesday with the family of George Floyd, just outside the courthouse where the murder trial of former officer Derek Chauvin is being held.
We're here, and we will fight for justice for this family, just like we're fighting for our brother.
At that press conference, I asked city officials, since Potter resigned and was not fired, would she be keeping her pension and would she be able to apply for another job in law enforcement? The mayor and the acting police chief could not answer that question. It's also worth noting that the mayor asked the state attorney general to take over the case, but the state AG says he feels confident that the Washington County DA can handle it. Vlad, Anne-Marie?
Omar, thank you. So Skyler Henry is here with us now to just explain the latest on the case. Skyler, thanks for joining us. You were in Brooklyn Center last night. What did you see? What was it like?
Yeah. Well, hey there. Good morning to you, Anne-Marie. Well, we were there right before the sun went down. There were hundreds, if not thousands, of people out there protesting, calling for justice for Daunte Wright, right in front of the police department headquarters in Brooklyn Center. And they actually held a small march from the police department headquarters right around to the FBI headquarters, the Minneapolis field office there, which is maybe a block or two away. But they were calling for justice, as I mentioned, for Daunte Wright. Some of the speakers saying that what happened to Mr. Wright shouldn't have happened, given the officer's time and experience within the police department, some 26 years. And that actually went on for hours. And after that point, we'd left. But according to some of the video that we've seen, things obviously escalated a bit in the third night of protests. Some of the officials said that they had to make dozens of arrests last night because bottles, bricks, and even some officers were sprayed with mace by some of the demonstrators. And so that is just a series of events that we've been seeing over the last few days in terms of in the Brooklyn Center area. Now, just to give you a little proximity as to where that is and where we are right now, that's about 15, 20 minutes away from here. We're here in front of the Hennepin County Courthouse where the trial for Derek Chauvin is expected to resume in the next few hours or so. But again, that just goes to show that close proximity here. They're worried about if that will impact some of the jurors in this case. And so you have these two similar incidents happening at the same time. It's why you saw in Omar's piece that the family of George Floyd came out to stand with the family of Daunte Wright and calling out what they feel as though is over-policing.
Skyler, as you know, Wright's family met yesterday with the family of George Floyd for a joint press conference. What was the main message, the main theme that they shared with reporters?
Yeah, Vlad, you know, it was one where they wanted to speak to who Daunte was. I think one of the more gripping moments of that press conference was when we heard from his grandmother, who said that he may not be everyone's angel, but he is that family's angel, just describing who he was. We also heard from attorney Ben Crump. We also heard from members of George Floyd's family as well, and as I mentioned, calling for something to be done, perhaps even on a federal level, in terms of police reform so that nothing like this happens again. Also, we heard from Daunte Wright's mother, who also spoke about her last moments, speaking to her son and also seeing her son before he was shot. And so it was compelling just because they put you right there in the moment, you know, and it was a different perspective than we may have seen before. And so I think that is what that family was looking to do. And it was certainly interesting enough that the Floyd family came out as well to show their support.
The former Brooklyn Center police chief claims that the officer involved, Kim Potter, mistook her gun for a taser during the fatal encounter. When I heard that, I thought, you know, how does something like that happen? You would think that these two weapons would be in different locations, or there would be a very obvious difference between them. So how does something like that happen? Is this a common or uncommon occurrence? What do you know?
Well, that's one of the big questions that a lot of the critics have, especially given where the uses of force are located. When you take, for example, that a handgun is traditionally on the right side of the utility belt and a taser or something like that on the left side, and then obviously there are visual differences, and that is why you have so many critics saying that this officer has been with the police department for more than 20 years. She should know better. Also, what you heard in Omar's piece is that this officer was doing field training. So there are a lot of questions as to why this happened the way it did. But it also goes to point out that this is an officer who has been part of that community for a very long time, more than 2 decades. She was the president of the Brooklyn Center Police Officers Association, and also helped that department in terms of investigations as it pertained to fatal police-involved shootings. And so she is heavily credentialed to help deal with situations like this. And so I think what you're going to see from a lot of critics, and perhaps even the district attorney there, is to say, well, why did this happen? This couldn't have been a mistake given how long you have been a police officer, and now something must be done about it. Whether that be charges, that remains to be seen.
All right, Skyler Henry for us in Minneapolis. Skyler, thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
Yeah.